All right, Robby, you say I'm going to like this one. So what's on your radar?
You are going to like it. So if you follow me on social media, you'd know that I spent the weekend in Las Vegas. Not on vacation. I was attending Freedom Fest. Got a little bit of vacation time in as well. But Freedom Fest is an annual political convention for libertarians like myself and also some conservatives. I've spoken there many times. I've actually lost count of how many times. I think it's been at least 5. Reason Magazine, which is the organization I work for when I'm not doing stuff with The Hill, they have a booth there at Freedom Fest every year, and a number of my colleagues speak as well. So it's a big event drawing between 2,000 and 3,000 attendees, according to organizers. The big name speakers tend to be well-known figures who overlap with the libertarian and conservative movements, including Kentucky Senator Rand Paul and Fox Business Channel host Lisa Kennedy. This year, one of the big-name speakers was actually Andrew Yang, businessman turned Democratic candidate for U.S. president and candidate for mayor of New York City. Yang has launched his own political party, the Forward Party, which he describes as neither right nor left, but an attempt to move America forward with a political message that speaks to Americans of all stripes, including libertarians like myself who currently feel neglected by the two-party duopoly. Kim has spoken positively about the Forward Party in the past, and we've actually interviewed Yang about it on our show. So I was pleased to finally meet Yang in person. Here we are with Joe Jorgensen, who's the Libertarian Party's 2020 presidential candidate. But of course, the gatekeepers of legitimate viewpoints within the mainstream and progressive Democratic media and activism apparatus despise this project because it's outside their purview and control. Enter the Southern Poverty Law Center. The SPLC bills itself as an organization that tracks hate groups and hate crimes in the U.S. In a recent article posted to its website, the SPLC made this claim. Former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang will speak this Saturday about his new Forward Party and creating political coalitions at the 2022 Freedom Fest in Las Vegas, which will feature far-right libertarians with ties to white nationalists and anti-Semites. The article is no cheerier than the headline, stresses all of the problematic people who have spoken at Freedom Fest or ever been tangentially connected to someone who spoke at Freedom Fest. So to be clear, I don't agree with everyone who appears at the conference. It's not even close. Some are more conservative than I am. Some are more Christian conservative figures. Some are libertarians who are more radical than I am. And then there are a lot of speakers that I do agree with. My colleagues at Reason, former Libertarian House Representative Justin Amash, education reformer Corey DeAngelis, individuals affiliated with great organizations like the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, Young Voices, the Foundation for Economic Education, the Pacific Legal Foundation, many others. I mean, take a look at this partial speakers roster and tell me this is predominantly some fringe far-right event. In case you don't recognize him, that's Glenn Greenwald in there. He was there. Also pictured comedian and actor John Cleese. But the SPLC focused on a handful of speakers who are not even really problematic themselves, but had previously spoken alongside individuals with bad and obnoxious views. So here's an example. The SPLC goes after Clint Russell, who hosts a podcast about the COVID lockdowns, and attacks Russell along the following lines. So this is from the article. Russell has appeared alongside Ryan Dawson, a Holocaust denier and self-described journalist who combines criticism of Israel's occupation of East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank with anti-Semitic tropes. So that's it. But Dawson, the alleged Holocaust denier, he wasn't the one speaking at Freedom Fest. Russell was. His crime was appearing alongside him. So we're getting well into guilt by association territory. It's easy for people who frequently appear at speaking events and political conferences to play 6 degrees of separation from some much more extreme figure. The first year I attended Freedom Fest, Donald Trump spoke there. You know who else spoke there? New York Times columnist Paul Krugman, who is among the most influential progressive writers in the world. Krugman debated a conservative economist, Stephen Moore. I didn't agree very much with Krugman, but I thought he did a pretty good job and was actually very persuasive on the issue they were debating, which was healthcare. Should he not have participated in that because someone else at the conference appeared alongside someone else who knows someone else, who was on a podcast with someone else who's certifiably crazy? Please. And I'd like to further note that Freedom Fest did actually take action to proactively disinclude 2 hateful speakers who were mistakenly invited without the organizers' approval. One of these was Nick Fuentes, a far-right activist and speaker who is, in my view, credibly described as a white nationalist. After the organizers realized that he had been included on a panel by a filmmaker who wanted to screen a documentary about controversial figures, so the organizers swiftly ejected Fuentes, rightly so. Not a libertarian, we don't want to associate with him. My friend Brad Palumbo, a libertarian writer who also spoke at Freedom Fest, notes that his friend Isaac Saul went to the conference explicitly to debate with right-wing people. Palumbo writes this: the SPLC's twisted logic would associate him with the views of his debate opponent for daring to be in the same location as him. We won't solve any of our nation's problems by locking ourselves in echo chambers and refusing to even engage with any group that contains a single distasteful member, or a single member who is in the past elsewhere associated with someone distasteful. Contrary to the SPLC's suggestions, that kind of siloing is a recipe for more extremism and more polarization, not less. And I agree with all of that. Now, the SPLC has, a long history, Kim, obviously, of, I think, of exaggerating in some cases certain groups' ties to hate groups, or even describing what are hate groups. So there's a map they had on their website a while back showing you state by state how many hate groups are in each state. Well, if you click on the state and look, what you find out is that, so let's say there's 14 hate groups. Well, half of them, first of all, are like black nationalist groups like the Nation of Islam. And to even call them groups is not really, like it might be one or two people who have a club. And then if they have a fight and split into two, like they break their club into two, all of a sudden there will be, hate groups have increased in this state. Well, it's not really, the threat of reactionary hate has increased because like two people who sell World War II memorabilia or something had a fight and now sell it individually. Like there's it's making a mountain out of a molehill, which is kind of the organization's entire MO.
Well, and really the SPLC looks like a hate group to me in and of itself. I mean, look, if you're going to be an organization that lists a bunch of groups that you hate, how are you then not a hate group? I mean, that's what they do. They go around and they label, okay, you're a hate group and you're a hate group. And the definition of hate speech and hate group has completely lost its meaning, because all it means is somebody that you think has abhorrent views. You don't like their views for whatever the reason might be. And so therefore you classify them as a hate group. And then when you ask, well, what qualifies them as a hate group? What exactly, for example, did Andrew Yang do or say, or, what is his, that's now that gives you the right to then go and blast out that he's associating with hate groups. And so therefore guilt by association, what exactly is this definition of a hate group? And I mean, a hate group to me is very specific. It's a group that organizes specifically because they want to eradicate or go after a certain other group of people. Right. So if you're a hate group, that you're a group that forms and you say, OK, we just want, but even then it's dicey. I mean, I think that if you have a viewpoint, like if you advocate, for example, for less immigration into the United States, I don't believe you're a hate group. You have a viewpoint that I don't agree with, but it doesn't mean that it's hate for immigrants. You're just saying, you believe that the border should. It depends on how you frame it, of course.
Right. If you don't want more immigrants coming in because you think America should only be a country for white people, and that even black people within America should be somewhere else and Asian people somewhere else, I would say, yeah, you're a hate group. Or still, hate is a weird way. You're a racist group, right? If you think that only white people should be in one country and Asian people in another country, and Jews in another country, or eradicated, as often these groups tend to have extremely anti-Jewish views. So yeah, I would agree in those cases, but it's not. And also we have to debate those people sometimes. We have to call out their bad views. We have to criticize them. So just saying anyone who's ever had any interaction with them is tarred by association is just a very silly way of doing it. And I don't know, it speaks to a desire to paint people they just disagree with on the right as uniquely fringe or racist or dangerous or hateful, when really many of those views, everyone who supports Donald Trump is probably some kind of racist, hateful person in their view. I mean, I don't want to mischaracterize their view. That's, I guess, an exaggeration of what they'd say. That's kind of the framing of how they put on it. There's a lot of, in fact, they did a lot of work on how Trump had emboldened or caused there to be more hate crimes or more hate incidents in schools. And I did a lot of a thorough debunking of that, which it did not actually, the data didn't bear that out whatsoever. But it's the hate group counting stuff is some weird science.
Right. They're just losing their credibility, honestly. I mean, organizations like the SPLC and many of the people on the left and progressives that are screaming constantly about, racism, bigotry, sexism, phobia, everybody's all of these things. And all of that has lost its meaning now. And people are just rolling their eyes saying everybody gets labeled these things at some point, at one point in time, by these groups and by these people. And so, this is it's just all lost its meaning. And badge of honor to Andrew Yang, I would say. I mean, in full disclosure, I am actually on the leadership board of the Forward Party. So, and I'll tell you, the last meeting that I sat in on, there was a lot of people very far left, I would say further than I am on a lot of things, and they're in the leadership board. It's a whole mix of people for that political party that is meant to be bringing people from both sides together, and people that are just fed up with all of this crap. So, this is kind of a badge of honor to Yang in a way that shows that he's actually making some noise, that he's being viewed as a threat to the establishment, and so they want to go on a smear campaign and say, oh, look at him. And they did this too. They called him a white during his campaign, his presidential campaign, calling him a white supremacist. Of
course, he's Asian,
right?
But white supremacist.
Right,
yes,
right,
yeah.
yeah. So
although Asians don't count as, I mean, you might.
We're
know
all
this,
white
Kim.
now, apparently.
I saw. I can't remember what school it was. It was some college I saw just yesterday. I'll have to find it. That it was doing a racial break, because trying to do look how diverse we are. We have such a diverse incoming class, and it listed people of color minus Asians was the category name. Anyway, it was a great meeting. Yang, I don't agree with everything he thinks or everything you think, but I do think it's important for people who are disaffected, dissatisfied with the two-party duopoly to stay in touch, have conversations about building alternative coalitions.
I agree with him on everything. There's a lot of things I think when it came to pandemics, I think there was things that we definitely diverged on. But the point is to say we've got to break up the duopoly. We have to get something in there and give us more choices. And that is the aim of the Forward Party. So people in that party, like I said, in the leadership board, do not agree with each other. But we all agree that the current system, the way it is broken. And it is ruining our culture, our democracy, our nation, the fabric of who we are as Americans. And it needs to be broken up somehow. And that is the goal.
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll have more Rising right after this. Stay tuned.